government remains committed in preventing leakages and corruption. DMAC Group plans to set up data center in Cyberjaya. Hello, good evening and salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm SAHIH and you're watching Malaysia Tonight. Malaysia's first priority must be to improve the issue of governance, while taxation is the secondary issue in any reasonable public and economic policy initiatives. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said the issue of governance is crucial to ensure that there are no unnecessary leakages, absconding of public wealth and corruption.
So discussion with the VAT or GST, it is relevant, but don't ever forget the fact that this country has inherited, frankly, a major problem of governance, of endemic corruption, which is even systemic. You know the figures for debt, deficit, which we have to grapple with.
He said the issue of governance must take precedence before talking about whether the government showed enough concern and care. Meantime, although the fundamental is governance, he said the clarity of policies, namely the new Industrial Master Plan 2030, National Energy Transition Roadmap and midterm review of the 12th Malaysia Plan, as well as political stability were also important to ensure the government could embark on radical policies and reform economy. Datuk Seri Anwar said this at the symposium, The Path Towards Greater Prosperity for Malaysia, organised by Universiti Malaya, at Putrajaya International Convention Centre today. DMAC Group, a luxury real estate developer in the United Arab Emirates, UAE, is planning to establish a data centre in Malaysia with an investment value of 250 million ringgit at Cyberjaya. Communications and Digital Minister Fahmi Fadil said the data centre will be focusing on retail and enterprise customers. Fahmi said the proposed size of the land is approximately 1.21 hectares, adding DMAC is currently evaluating Cyberjaya and CBD KL as the option. Fahmi said DMAC has also secured land in Indonesia and Thailand for the proposed data centre investment and is focusing on Malaysia for the upcoming investment. Earlier, the minister had a meeting with DMAC Group founder and chairman Hussein Sajwani at his residency in Dubai. The DMAC Group focuses on investments in private equities, mergers and acquisitions, and holds major and minority holdings in public listed companies and industries like luxury fashion, real estate, hospitality and manufacturing. The Pangkalan Data Utama Padu system is able to streamline the implementation of government assistance more widely and comprehensively. Deputy Finance Minister Datuk Seri Ahmad Maslan said the Padu system, which provides a combination of socio-economic information of every household in the country, can find out in detail about the assistance received by the people in the country. Elaborating further on the matter, the Deputy Minister said through the PADU database, the government will be able to identify the assistance received by each citizen as a whole. This includes assistance from the Social Welfare Department and Rahmah cash contribution. He also said that sometimes the aid can overlap and that has to be prevented and distributed to others. PADU is a system that combines over 200 databases to coordinate the collection of national information in a centralized and integrated manner. Malaysia's real gross domestic product GDP is expected to grow 4.3% in 2024, up from the 4.0% growth expected for 2023. According to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, this would mainly be driven by higher global export demand, particularly from the technology sector. On Malaysia's inflation, IMF's Asia-Pacific Regional Studies Division Chief Shanaka J. Perry said it has been gradually slowing, but the subsidy reforms tabled in Budget 2024 would pose some risks to that. Nonetheless, he reckons that the subsidy reforms would be a one-off event and that it would be unnecessary for additional measures from Bank Negara Malaysia BNM. Shanaka said the IMF's recommendation for Malaysia in the last report showed that the monetary policy should be restrictive enough to bring the inflation down towards the 2-3% range over the medium term.
And at the moment, we kind of see, interest rates have been raised. And right now, it seems like, inflation is coming down gradually. So in that sense, we think the current restrictive stance, maintaining a restrictive stance should help bring down inflation.
The Mega Buy Malaysian Product campaign, Mega BMPC, set for 2025, will unify industry players from various categories under one roof to promote local products among consumers. Deputy Domestic Trade and Cost of Living Minister Fuzia Saleh said the program will serve as a showcase for diverse and high-quality Malaysian products with export potential similar to the Malaysian Agriculture, Horticulture and Agro-Tourism Exhibition Maha. The Mega BMPC will incorporate elements aimed at promoting and exporting Malaysian products to the global stage by joining forces with other organisations.
Saya ingin memaklumkan kepada Dewan Yang Mulia ini berkenaan dengan KBBM ini ada 3 objektif utama, iaitu yang pertama merangsang pertumbuhan ekonomi domestik terutama selepas COVID ini. Kedua, membudaya di kalangan pengguna Malaysia supaya mengutamakan produk Malaysia ketika membeli belah. Dan ketiga, memperkasa produk tempatan di dalam industri peruncitan tempatan.
AstraZeneca Malaysia is of the opinion that the world should be well prepared in facing the next pandemic as and when the incident occurs. The science-led global biopharmaceutical company noted that the world has learned its lesson from COVID-19. AstraZeneca Malaysia's country president Vinod Narayanan said information is key to all when facing the spread of illness, particularly non-communicable diseases NCDs such as asthma among others.
So we have, R&D, pipeline where we continue to look into, new medicines. But in terms of predicting the next pandemic, I think it's anybody's guess. But at this point of time, we've learned some good lessons from the last pandemic in terms of how to work together in a public-private partnership setting to move some of the healthcare objectives forward. And that's what we are excited about.
Echoing the same sentiment, Dr. Helmi Haja Maidin, co-founder of Asthma Malaysia, noted that the preparation is crucial when dealing with NCDs.
There are many people who are currently affected by the haze. It is something that unfortunately is a recurring event as we see every year or every other year in Malaysia. And without knowing what's happening when it comes to your disease, it's very difficult to know what the right approach is when it comes to managing your disease effectively.
AstraZeneca Malaysia today, together with several renowned societies in the medical profession, unveiled a new digital health portal named My Sihat Pel for the public access to a wide range of health services through their digital services. Commenting on today's launch, Vinod said the portal would continue to sustain on public-private partnerships in order for the platform to remain essential for at least the next 5 years. Now on to the latest developments in Gaza. The Organisation of Islamic Cooperation OIC strongly condemned an attack by Israel on the Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital in central Gaza, denouncing it as an act of organised state terrorism and a war crime. More than 500 people were killed in the airstrike yesterday as thousands of Palestinians were at the hospital when the building came under bombardment. It underlined that the 57-member bloc of Muslim nations held the Israeli occupation accountable for the consequences of its crime and brutal attacks against the Palestinian people, which contradict all human values and constitute a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law. Emphasizing the need for accountability and punishment for such acts of organised state terrorism, the OIC called on the international community to urgently intervene to stop the war crimes committed by the Israeli occupations in the Gaza Strip. And now we move on to the next segment of our bulletin on the table. Over to you, Otto.
Well, thank you and good evening. I'm Otto Othman. Now, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim last week presented Budget 2024, which landed with aplomb, bringing forth a whopping allocation of 393.8 billion ringgit, now the largest in Malaysia's history. Now, it has stirred a lot of reactions and comments by all Malaysians. Now, so live online right now, we have with us tonight the Chief Economist of Maybank Group, Mr. Suhaimi Ilyas, to provide us with some insights and also some thoughts on the matter. Now, thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Suhaimi.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mr. Suhaimi, kicking off, what is your initial reaction after the budget was presented by the Prime Minister last Friday? Do you feel somewhat satisfied with the allocations announced?
I think initially, Budget 2024 emphasizes sustainable growth, balanced development, as well as being equitable and inclusive for the people. There are two key takeaways, in my opinion, as an economist. One is the government remains committed to fiscal consolidation. Budget deficit as a percentage of GDP and in value next year is lower at 4.3% and 85 billion ringgit compared with 5% and 93 billion ringgit in 2023. And this is basically shows the government is committed to be on track towards achieving budget deficit to GDP ratio averaging 3.1% in 2025-2026, as well as the longer term aim of capping our budget deficit to GDP ratio at 3%. The other thing I want to highlight, Otto, is the allocations and incentives of budget 2024 are aligned to all those economic and policy blueprints, master plans, roadmaps that were announced in the past 2 to 3 months, i.e. Madani Economy, the 12th Malaysia Plan Midterm Review, the new Industrial Master Plan 2030, and the National Energy Transition Roadmap. So it's a budget that is obviously good for construction and infrastructure activities, but it's also positive for strategic high growth, high value industries and sectors like green energy transition and mobility, electronics, chemicals, digital economy, startup, tourism, Islamic finance, halal industry, global services hub, as well as addressing issues of food security.
Now, how does the banking sector actually react to this kind of information and, of course, the budget?
From the banking sector perspective, there are a few things to highlight as far as the budget is concerned. As mentioned earlier, one of the key strategic sector identified in Madani Economy narrative and framework is Islamic finance, and the budget 2024 tax incentives for Islamic securities buying and selling, for Labuan entities undertaking Islamic finance activities will enhance the breadth and depth of our Islamic finance product offerings and services. The other thing is Budget 2024 also emphasizes the importance of sustainability, addressing climate change and building future resilience by prioritizing pathways to a just transition to net zero carbon emission via renewable energy, green technologies, as well as environment and energy conservation. Budget initiative in this area include financial institutions' commitment to 200 billion ringgit worth of financing. One more thing that I want to mention here is micro, small, medium enterprises is also a priority for budget, especially in terms of enhancing the funding ecosystem for MSMEs transitions toward productivity, innovation, digitalization, and sustainability, including energy transition, as well as scaling up to be regional and global players. And this is reflected by the 44 billion worth of financing and guarantee schemes.
Now, thank you very much for that explanation. Now, the service tax increased to 8%, except for food and beverages, telecommunications, parking, logistics, high-value goods tax between 5 to 10% and 10% of capital gain tax. How could these new taxes potentially contribute, right, to Malaysia's revenue, and how much could we expect from these?
I think overall, those tax measures you mentioned just now are expected to earn the government an extra 4.5 billion ringgit on net basis after taking into account of revenue losses or foregone from the various tax incentives in budget 2024.
Now, how would be mostly affected by these taxes? Who would be? And how affected would they be, actually?
Well, services tax hike, in my opinion, will mostly affect higher income groups as they have higher disposable income and therefore they spend more on services as opposed to lower income groups that spend more of their incomes on essentials like housing, food, transport, clothing, energy, including fuel. In addition, as we understand currently, and as you mentioned, the services tax hikes to 8% from 6% will not affect services like F&B, telecommunications, and parking charges. So the rest will only see 2 percentage point increase in the services tax charges. I think the one that will be most affected sector-wise or business-wise is those that are going to be included as a result of the expansion of services tax coverage on services like karaoke centers, delivery of goods, and non-financial brokerage and underwriting services like for ships, aircraft, commodities, and real estates.
Now, what about the proposed implementation of a global minimum tax? Would it pose any challenge to any foreign company with at least 750 million euros in revenue to invest in Malaysia?
Well, a bit of background. I mean, global minimum tax is a global tax initiative to end the race to the bottom in terms of competition between countries on tax rates and incentives that led to the operational and profit shifting by MNCs to avoid or reduce paying taxes. So GMT is aimed at ensuring MNCs pay the right or fair amount of taxes, regardless of where they operate, and the agreed tax rate is 15%. So far, more than 140 countries have agreed to adopt and implement GMT. And to recall, Ministry of Finance has indicated Malaysia's commitment on this last year, and the original plan was to implement GMT next year, but that is now pushed to 2025. Our neighboring countries like Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam will also implement GMT. So I think there is no reason for us not to implement GMT on foreign-based MNCs in Malaysia because other countries will tax Malaysian MNCs abroad. I think in terms of implication to foreign companies or foreign direct investors, I believe they look at a host of factors, not just tax regime alone, when making decision on where to invest because it is a long-term commitment. So this includes quality of our infrastructure and our workforce, rules of law, regulatory efficiency, geographical locations, protection of rights and intellectual properties, political stability even. So we should therefore focus on our attractiveness as an investment destination or location as a total package. And that's what was said in the narratives of Madani Economy and IMP 2030. That's what needs to be done, and I believe that's what's being done.
Now, other than generating revenue, what else do you think are we missing out on this?
I don't really see it as missing out in terms of generating revenues because I suppose your question relates to the issue of this target to achieve medium-term fiscal consolidation. If we look from budget 2024, the fiscal consolidation strategies and measures are broad-based with 4 key elements. One is the tax measures that we have discussed so far to boost government income. We have that hikes in existing taxes like services tax and sugar tax. We have introduction of new taxes like capital gains tax, high-value luxury goods tax next year, and global minimum tax in 2025. Second set of measures is actually spending measures, and the focus is on targeted subsidy rationalization. Third set of measures is administrative measures, and the key one is the rollout of e-invoicing system over the next 2 years, essentially to enhance tax efficiency, audit and compliance, and hence improve tax collection. The fourth element in our strategy for medium-term fiscal consolidation is legislative measures to strengthen fiscal prudence and discipline in public finance. So we have Fiscal Responsibility Act that was tabled and approved last week, and I expect the government to follow up with the Government Procurement Act in second quarter next year, essentially to improve governance in public spending and contracts, especially in open tenders, as well as compulsory audit and accountability in large value procurements and contracts.
That's great. Now, how would foreign investors actually react to these announcements? What would they say or still see Malaysia as a business-friendly nation? Would they?
I think they do. I think what is very clear since 2021, i.e. post the pandemic years of 2020, if we look at the statistics from MIDA under MITI on approved investment, foreign direct investment into Malaysia has been very, very robust. That continued last year. And in the first half of this year, the trend continued to indicate that MIDA should be able to meet its target of achieving approved investment of 200 billion ringgit. And I guess we have also seen in terms of news flows recently, there has been some interesting high-profile foreign direct investment coming into Malaysia involving companies like Tesla, Infineon, and the likes. I guess, as I said, the challenge or the focus going forward is to continue focusing on boosting our attractiveness as an investment destination and location as a total package.
Now, the government aims to reach a 3.5% deficit to GDP ratio within the next 2 years. Now, is this actually possible? And how can Malaysia actually achieve this?
I think if you look at what has been happening over the past 3 to 4 years, we are on the right track. In 2020 to 2022, our fiscal or budget deficit to GDP ratio averaged 6%. It came down to 5.6% in 2022, drop further to estimated 5% this year. Next year expected to be 4.3%. So we are, in my opinion, on track to achieve that fiscal consolidation. Measures-wise, as I mentioned earlier, government strategy for fiscal consolidation and measures are broad-based with those 4 key elements that I've mentioned in terms of tax measures, spending measures, administrative measures, and legislative measures. Of course, one more key element that is very important is we must have economic growth, because this will help support and improve government finance, and that's why Budget 2024 is also about stimulating longer-term sustainable economic growth, given the allocation and incentives for those strategic, high-value, high-growth sectors, industries, activities that I mentioned earlier.
Now, assuming all of the proposed plans went well, what does it mean to the people of Malaysia?
Well, Budget 2024 marks the start of the country's long-term journey to economic restructuring and reforms. If all goes well, ultimately rakyat will benefit from essentially higher income, because among the key targets and aims of the economic and policy blueprints, master plans and roadmaps over the past 2-3 months is to raise the GDP share of workers' income to 40% in 2025 and 45% in 10 years' time, from around 1/3 currently. The NIMP 2030 also aims to raise the median wages and salaries in manufacturing sector to around 4,500 ringgit in 2030 from 2,500 ringgit currently. So I think ultimately the biggest benefit to the people, if all goes well, is higher income.
Now, is there anything the rakyat actually can do to help?
Well, in terms of how people can help, I think there is a need to realize and accept that certain things that have been part of our lives for so long are no longer sustainable and cannot go on forever, namely blanket subsidies. The other thing is we need to raise our productivity as well to justify higher income. So people should take advantage of budget 2024 measures like the individual income tax relief for fees on upskilling and self-enhancement courses to improve skill set and their work knowledge.
Now, I'm afraid that that's all the time that we have. But before we go, I just want to add that it seems that manufacturing seems to be the key engine of growth for Malaysia. According to the new Industrial Master Plan 2030, more than 20% contribution to our GDP with a window of about 7 years. Are we really ready for such ambitious economical undertaking, do you think?
Well, I think quite clearly the target set under the various master plans, roadmaps, and blueprints certainly looks ambitious, and I would say some of the targets can be considered as stretch targets. But I guess the reason why we put all those ambitious target stretch KPIs, so to speak, is essentially to galvanize all parties concerned to basically work hard, work together to achieve and realize those aims and targets. And I think as far as manufacturing is concerned, the reason why MITI come up with NIP 2030 is to make sure that our manufacturing sector, our manufacturing industries, our manufacturing economy does not hollow out because that is the risk that can happen to any economy. We have done well in terms of restructuring and transforming our economy from one that is commodity-based to one that is industries-based. Going forward, we want to make sure that the industry base remains intact, and more importantly, they move up, shift to produce high-value, high-growth, complex products that will also entail benefits to the people in terms of generating high-paying jobs and high income.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Swami, for that information and your time as well. So I'm afraid that's all the time that we have for today, actually. So thank you so much once again for your knowledge and insights. So it's back to you.
Thank you, Otto. And that concludes this edition of Malaysia Tonight. I'm SAHIH Samsudin, Malaysia Madani, Tekad Perpaduan, Penuhi Harapan. Thank you for watching and good night.